welcome to On the House, the podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and video games, because hey, whatever we're talking about is on the house. Joining me as always is Kiki.
Hello.
Lynette.
Hello.
And Dave.
Hey there.
And folks, it's Dave's pick this weekend. Boy, this is one I've been looking forward to talking about since he first suggested it, but it's his pick, so Dave, what the heck are we talking about?
Well, this week we're going to be talking about a game franchise that was near and dear to my heart in my youth. It was one of my favorite things. I'm talking, of course, about the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater franchise.
Yeah, these games, I don't know the reputation they have anymore just because of where the series eventually went. But for the younger people listening to us, if there are younger people listening to us, there was a time where these games were the definition of perfection in gaming. Critically speaking, Tony Hawk 2 and 3 are the best reviewed games on the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, respectively.
I mean, I am not going to argue with that because Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 is like one of my favorite games of all time. So I can definitely see why it would be one of the top rated games.
I'm slightly different. Pro Skater 4 is like in my top 3 of all times, but I can understand why there's a slight more preference for 2 and 3 among the fan base.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think I ever got past the college level on Pro Skater 4, so that might have impacted my... What'd you say?
That's the first level.
I know, I never got past it. So, I mean, that probably impacted the influence of the game.
To be fair, 4 is a little bit more difficult than what it should be. I'm just saying.
It's the structure of the goals is different too, just because you have to go to each person, and it's a little bit, I don't want to say like story-wise, but there's a certain sequencing, I guess, to some of the goals that you're supposed to get, and it was kind of jarring for me. I could just never quite get it right, and a lot of the mini games just felt impossible. I don't know if it had anything to do with the controls, but I also felt like, honestly, I mixed up which one was which one was 3 and which one was 4 for so long, because 4 has worse graphics than 3. I thought for sure that the one that I was playing that was 4, I was like, oh, for sure this one is an earlier game because it doesn't look good.
I don't know if I'd say that so much as 4, they tried to make the levels a lot more open and bigger. So as a result, you don't get the finer details that you got with 3.
Oh, is that what went on? Okay, that makes sense.
That's my guess. Mm-hmm. I mean, I personally think they look about the same graphics-wise.
Oh man, I noticed it right away when I was a kid.
Since 4 was the first one I owned, as opposed to just playing a demo or at a friend's house, I was actually more used to the goal structure it had as a kid than the standard 2-minute time limiter of the first 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, was there even a time limit in 4?
Well, the goals were timed, but
the mini games I know they're timed, but I'm pretty sure you could just wander around the whole campus the entire time, right?
Yeah, 4 was definitely, you could see they wanted to transition into something different. They just hadn't quite figured out what it was.
Yeah, we grew up on just 4 on the OG Xbox. So I don't have any input as to differences, but I mean, we put hours and hours on that game.
Did you get past the college level?
Oh yeah, we went through. We jumped around quite a bit, so we wanted all the levels.
I know for me, because I actually been replaying both versions of 3, the original game and the 4th game, just in preparation for these podcasts, and I realized these are probably some of my favorite games. It's been so long since I played them that I kind of forgot just how much I love these games. It's I was rusty, but after a while it's oh wait, I know how to do this kickflip over a turnpike, grind on this rail, and then if I jump just right, I can get on this lower rail and get a sweet combo going here.
Mm-hmm.
And the gameplay, I describe it the same way I describe like the Arkham games, where it's easy to just grab the controller and feel cool, but once you've mastered that gameplay, you can get like, well, in Arkham over 100 combos, or in this game, like thousands of points worth of combos out of a single grind by just doing all these tricks and flips in between, you know?
Yeah. Well, if you go on the cruise ship, you get like hundreds of thousands.
Oh, yeah.
And especially with the tricks that were added as it went on, with 2 bringing in the manuals, and especially when 3 introduced a revert, like the possible combos were pretty much endless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would say the classic 4 games, and even the 2 Undergrounds are just among the all-time greats in my view.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. I didn't get into the Underground games quite as much as I got into the first 3, just because my preference was more so the, give me a level, alright, I'm going to hit it until I master this level. But that's not to say the games are bad, it's just personal preference there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We'll wait for bad till we get to American Wasteland.
That's like, out of all the series that eventually went downhill, and no pun intended in this case, but how flat the latter part of the franchise fell on its face was just, again, no pun intended there, but it's just sad.
Yeah, I always got the impression that the focus went from these games to Guitar Hero. Because
quickly,
so it was very much, speaking of franchises that were at one point the biggest thing in the world and then kind of disappeared. But for those who are unfamiliar with these games, they were originally developed by a studio called Neversoft, which might be the most punk rock name of all the game studios to ever exist.
And I'm stealing a joke from Honest Trailers, but they will never make software again.
Ooh, too soon.
I don't get it.
They're defunct now.
Oh, they had the cool eye with the pike in it.
I know.
I love that.
We're very morbid people here, in case you haven't caught on, listeners.
Well, cat's out of the
That
bag.
used to squick me out when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
that intro with the eye where it gets stabbed with the nail, and it's just like, oh man, that weirded me out. But I don't know, after getting an eye punctured in real life, it just doesn't have the same effect on me anymore.
And isn't it ironic?
Oh my word. No.
Dude,
Oh.
I think it was 3 that had like the Neversoft eye as a secret skater.
I think you're right,
Oh,
yeah.
that's right. I forgot about that.
I feel like
There were
she's
a lot
playing
of
only 4
secrets.
now.
There were a lot of secret skaters. Like, you were Spider-Man in one, Shrek in another. I remember Darth Maul was one of the other undergrounds.
No, Iron Man was the Underground 1. Shrek was Underground 2. 3 had both Darth Maul and Wolverine. 4
Okay, is that the order?
What?
Okay, I got the order mixed up.
Mm-hmm. And 2 had Spooderman.
Spooderman does whatever a Spooderman does. Yeah, it's these games, like, obviously the first 4 aren't very story heavy, so you can't really go so much into plot details, but just a little backstory on these games is originally Neversoft was approached by Activision, who I can't remember if they owned them at the time or if they eventually bought them pretty quickly. But they were approached to make a racing skateboard game. And they kind of were playing around with the engine and it was like, no, we can do something a lot cooler with this. So what the studio did, it was a studio of 12 people, actually built a ramp at their house so they all could experiment with skateboarding and really try to get the feel for the game. And they showed off what they had done to Activision. And a funny thing is their previous game was Apocalypse, which you may remember for being the game that starred Bruce Willis, and that's about it. I don't think anyone remembers that game outside of that. But anyways, so they actually had his character skating around just kind of as the default character because they didn't have any license deals or anything. But a funny little tidbit is his gun was a part of his character model, so the entire time in the test demo, if you ever get to see the footage, it looks like Bruce Willis is just skating around with a gun looking for people.
Oh my gosh.
And actually, there's still some remnants in the original game of what the original concept was. The mall and downhill jam levels stop if you reach the end.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently I read the downtown Minneapolis level was sort of a remnant from like the Bruce Willis project, which is why it's much more wide open than any of the other levels in one.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, so Tony Hawk was actually added on fairly late into the development of the first game, which, boy, talk about timing working out for you, because just a month before the game went out, he actually was able to do a 900, which was a trick deemed impossible. Like, I remember when he hit this, it was like the impossible, we think somebody might do it, but we have no idea who's going to do it. And when he hit that, like, skateboarding and other extreme sports went from, they were bubbling in popularity, but that bubble just exploded and they were everything in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Like, I definitely view these games as like the perfect time capsule for their era.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this was the same time period where Rocket Power was on Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you can't play these games without instantly thinking about skater culture in the 90s / early 2000s and just some awesome punk rock.
And in the later installments, you can clearly see we're in the Jackass era.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, speaking of punk rock, we ought to talk about the soundtracks for the games. So, I don't know about the soundtracks for 1 and 2. I never played 1 and 2. 3, I actually, so funny story, for most of the songs, they didn't really register to me. They were just sort of like white noise. I only really liked the one song, Ace of Spades. So I turned off every other song on the soundtrack and just had Ace of Spades play on repeat while I played the game. So,
I mean, in one hand, I want to say
that I was living.
yes, this game also introduced me to Motorhead, which is a fact that I'm eternally grateful for.
Well, Pro Skater 4 is the first time I ever heard NWA.
Oh, really?
And their Express Yourself song, isn't it?
Yeah, this also introduced me to the Ramones, which, thank you. Thank you for including that song. My life has been changed. Maybe not for the better, but it was changed.
I hear you on that. When I played Underground 2, I basically only turned on 2 songs and had them on repeat.
Well, that was the great thing.
I'm glad somebody can relate to that.
Which
isn't to say that the other songs on 3 were bad. It's just like, oh man, I really just want to listen to only this song.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, everyone had those. The soundtrack was great because no matter what your music tastes were, unless you listened strictly to like Scatman music, there was something on there for you.
I mean, like, Underground 2 had a Frank Sinatra song.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Which,
Yeah, we didn't pay too much attention to the music. We just skated. We're lame.
well, what I would actually do is I'd turn down on 3, especially because that soundtrack. You got the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You got this song called I'm Destroying the World, which will always be stuck in my head. Like I said, the Ramones, you got Motorhead, and just a ton of great music on that thing. I really hope if they do an HD remake, they just keep the same soundtrack if they can. But what I would always do is I'd churn down like the level audio and churn up the music to as loud as it could be once I figured out which songs I wanted for that particular course.
Nice. I do like the game sounds, though. I thought they were pretty great. I think they really add to the flavor of each of the levels.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to the next point of topic I want to discuss. From any of the games, what were your favorite levels?
Oh, for sure, Suburbia. Suburbia is my favorite because of the haunted house. I love the haunted house.
I love the first time you find that too. You're just like, what the fuck have I found?
It's so spooky. And like, okay, and the Thin Man, right? Like he howls as he says the line and disappears into the ground. And like my brother, I'm so bummed that Matt couldn't be here because he loved this game too. We would play this game all the damn time. And so like, and he swore that he could see the guy turning into a wolf as he went down. I never saw it, but like I wanted to believe him because all that was cool. And then you go in and there's the thunder and like, and it's like, and then there you can hear the ghosts and like with the hands reaching out of the gravestones. And if you like, okay, so I know that you're supposed to go just drive straight through to get to the secret tape in the top of that part of the mansion, but if you look, you can see like the floating things on the from the table and like just all sorts of spooky stuff like while the bats are going past you, and it's just so cool. Oh my gosh, I love the haunted mansion so much.
Yeah, while replaying this game, I originally had the PlayStation 1 version of it, which, initially I'm noticing, okay, this level's in the wrong order. Hey, I don't remember this being here. But when I got to the suburban level, which was actually one of the last levels for 3,
really,
they didn't have the haunted house section. And
no!
I was like, okay, that's enough. I gotta go find a version of this on the PS2. This is not right.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned something earlier, and I said something. I asked you versions of 3 because I was like, "What does that mean?" There was 2 versions of number 3, like. But oh my gosh, the version of there is a version of number 3 with Suburbia without the haunted house. That is a fucking abomination. Like, that is horrible.
Like 3 and 4 had PS1 ports.
Ugh.
Which I'm not going to say the PS1 port of 3 is terrible. It's just definitely missing something. The way I would describe it is, say you took song lyrics and basic chords and you gave them to 2 bands. One's Metallica and the other one is that local metal band. So, one... I'm talking 80s era Metallica, just for the record.
Mm-hmm.
So one is like pure perfection, and the other one is good. It's fine. It is a serviceable product. But the other one's Metallica. Come on.
That's a good analogy.
As for me, some of my favorite levels, like the one that immediately shoots to my mind is Alcatraz from 4.
That is a great level.
Like being able to do all the grinding gaps with the switchbacks, like doing tricks inside the cell block. Yeah, some of the most challenging goals in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the high wire that you could find.
Yeah, I never played the level myself, but I did see the LP of it. It actually does look really cool, and I really like the fact that there's like inmate ghosts, like they're just hanging around hoping for somebody to do tricks.
Oh yeah, that was a great level.
That's great.
And whenever I played like multiplayer, I always loved the King of the Hill mode where you had to keep the crown, and this was like one of my favorite levels to play it on.
Oh my word, I forgot about that. That
Yeah,
was
this
so
game
odd.
had early online features.
Yeah, I like the Alcatraz level, but the one we spent most of our time on, my sister and I, was the university campus.
Mm-hmm.
Our favorite, I guess, quest to do was the drunk guy with the purple or the pink elephant.
Oh my gosh.
I forgot about that
That
one.
was so weird.
Oh,
And
we
it was like-
always went to there, yeah.
It was fascinating for my younger self when I first learned about like the clock tower secret,
Mm-hmm.
where you
What?
could jump in the back and it teleports you.
Ooh.
Oh, man. I wish I still had it.
The mini game in the college level that sticks out to me the most is the one where you play tennis with some dude, and every time you
Yes.
lose, he goes, "Foolish skater person, I laugh at you, ha 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 ha."
Yes!
For the longest time, I thought that was a French accent. It took me until like a few days ago to realize that's supposed to be like a Swedish accent.
Oh,
When I was
no.
a kid, I thought it was French. It's like no. That's ho 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 or whatever. But yeah. So I heard that line so many times because for the life of either me or Matt, I don't think we won that game a single time. It was just too difficult for us for some reason. So we would hear that guy say that every time.
Well, I
To
have
be
to.
fair, they made you use your skateboard instead of a tennis racket, so
Right, which made it super awkward. I don't like. I mean, poor craftsman blames their tools, right? So I don't want to blame it on like the gameplay or something. But I just hey, maybe we just sucked, but we couldn't get past that at all.
it was hard. It was.
Like in
Well,
the
if
next game, they introduced difficulty settings as a kind of a response to, okay, some of this is getting a little too difficult for some people.
Well, if there's something I have to admit, like I love for the most, and college was one of my favorite levels, but until maybe just this or last year, there was another mini game on that level that I didn't even know existed.
Oh?
Like basically, there's this electrical box on the street that you have to lip trick on, and it activates, and you gotta suddenly like start grinding the power cables for a certain period of time. I did not know this was a thing. Like it was not in the official guide, and because most of the YouTube videos I watched of it didn't do this. I had this game for like maybe a decade and a half, and I did not know this was a feature.
I love that in games where they don't tell you, hey, do this obvious thing, it'll be pretty cool. Just, they expect you to find it on your own.
Mhm.
As for me, my favorite levels, first off, anything that was a downhill level, I loved. Don't ask me why, but like the airport level, the mall level in the first game, those were all some of my favorite levels.
And Downhill Jam from the first game too.
Oh yeah, that one too.
Mhm.
Basically, any downhill level, I just love the concept of the downhill games, the downhill levels, because even though it's a straightforward pass, once you get good at the game, you start realizing, okay, I'm going to go up versus the normal on the ground method, and it's kind of once you're able to do that for the entire run, you get just this feeling of totally mastering the level that I love. But my all-time favorite level is the cruise ship. I love that concept. I love that you could grind for days in the greenhouse. And for some reason, Teenage Clancy really liked the girls that you had to impress. Who knows why that was a
Yeah, funny
factor.
that.
And one thing I never picked up on in my youth, but when I saw like other people doing retrospectives on the series that I have to give never saw credit for, is that for the levels that were based on real specific locations, they took a lot of attention to detail in recreating things.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually very cool. I did not realize that they, I mean, obviously they put a lot of detail in the levels, but I did not realize that they actually were trying to be accurate to real life stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a Portland level.
Oh,
Like, I think a few of the like straight up skate park levels in the earlier games were just flat out recreations almost perfectly. Like I saw a photo of the real life at Kona that was used in 4, and it was like practically spot on.
that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there were some limitations with the system and everything, but it's like when they got it right, they got it right. Like I'm thinking about like Canada was another one of my favorite levels
Of Canada.
because like there was a bully and you could cover him in snow. Plus, that's one of those areas that I mentioned my brain kind of remembered. Oh wait, if I go here, do this trick, I can absolutely rack up the points. Like I think on one move I got like 20,000 points just from
Ooh.
keeping the grind going.
You're talking about the area in the back, like that parking lot area where you can go from rail to wall, rail to wall.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, basically the route I took, you covered like half the level. But you were just hopping from rail to rail so much that you kept it going.
Mm.
And I got really good at the balancing on the rails. That was always the first stat that I would max out every single time.
Oh yeah.
I gotta say, I like how they took a snowy forest and just called that Canada. This is all Canada is.
Yes,
Well, see,
this
but
is all
I liked
Canada.
that so much though because I liked that it looked like, oh hey, it looks like outside, it looks like trees, and like it's great. Because I'm not a huge fan of urban settings, so it was really nice to have a level that was a little bit more rural.
We should point out that 3 of us grew up in the Pacific Northwest, which is pretty much the exact same as Canada. British
level,
Columbia
but less-
over here is basically a slightly more rain than what we get near Portland.
Though, well, we're mostly like talking about the first 4 games. Like the Undergrounds had some classic levels. New Jersey, like Thug One's Manhattan is up there for one of my favorites. And I was always keen on the Boston and Australia levels in Thug 2.
Mm-hmm. I always liked the Boston one. I didn't play the Thug games as much, just because at the time I was kind of broke always.
Eh.
Well, being a teenager, and it was as you get one game a year, and at the time I was more into like the Jack and Daxter type games.
Well, for like 5 consecutive years, like Tony Hawk games were always among my Christmas gifts.
Oh, nice.
And I gotta
nice.
show you guys this thing I found, a graphic somebody made years ago, but I just found it to be the funniest thing. I sent it in the chat.
Let us see this. Oh, jeez.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wait, there's a timeline, but they don't have
It's-
story.
It's somebody just making a joke.
Yeah, a meme.
I love the alternate universe one that has the Disney skate.
Oh no.
Although I am
Oh.
disappointed. Technically, Gun is part of the Tony Hawk universe, and I don't see that anywhere on this
Wait, I'm
graphic.
sorry, Gun? It's
Yeah,
part
they
of
have
the
movie
Tony Hawk
posters
universe?
for it. It was made by the same studio.
Oh no.
Wait a second, but I thought no. I thought Gun was in the Red Dead timeline.
No, Gun was a separate game from that.
Okay, separate. Okay. Oh my word.
Speaking of games we need to do retrospectives on, someday in the future.
Yeah.
I had that Disney skate game when I was growing up. Because they actually advertised that they were just straight up using the engine from Pro Skater 4.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which can we talk about the sheer amount of games that had skateboarding levels or something along that lines? Because it's like Spyro had skateboarding, and Spyro doesn't have hands.
Where's
Well,
where's
you
it on a
mentioned
skateboard?
Jack and Dax
Dragon
earlier, and
Quest
Jack 3
skate.
has like, well, even Jack 2 I think has like skateboarding sort of.
Oh yeah, they have a full skate park in 2. Which, granted, in that game also the hoverboard it's not just for skateboarding to do a Tony Hawk thing. That's all actually a very useful weapon.
Mhm.
Again, games we'll probably do a retrospective on at some point.
I mean, like, even though Tony Hawk is the most prominent example, there were so many other attempts to like make name athletes extreme sports franchises.
Oh yeah.
They tried to
I
do
mean-
like Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, and I can tell they probably wanted to make like Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX be like a sibling franchise because Pro Skater 4 actually contains a level from Pro BMX 2.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
Well,
then
but,
there were
it's not like Tony Hawk Pro Skater started that though, because wasn't there already like football games with like coaches' names or something attached to them?
Oh, you
like-
mean the Madden series?
I'm more talking about extreme sports, not like regular sports. But
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
I mean, like just like extreme sports games. Like I'm talking about like surfing, skating, that kind of stuff.
What's the definition of extreme sport?
You haven't heard that phrase before?
Is there
Think
some
X
sort of
games.
okay?
I
X
mean,
So
I
wait,
would consider-
extreme sports is what, like skateboarding and BMX and, but
Yeah.
not like sports.
Yeah, it's like skateboarding, BMX, snowboarding.
Okay.
Sometimes hockey's thrown in there, sometimes it's not.
I would consider anything that does bodily harm an extreme
Yeah, I would have
sport.
thought so too. That's like my first reaction. I was like, well, now wait a second. Why is
They get
that
like full on brain damage.
like okay, as opposed to this other one? I'm pretty sure there's both like bodily harm involved, but okay. Although we also like, I don't know, was there blood in the first two Tony Hawk games? Because there is a lot of blood in 3, just from how much you skid on the ground, or maybe it's just because I biffed all the time, but left a lot of blood on the cement.
In fact, there's a cheat in 4 that allows you to make your impacts bloodier.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yep, I remember
I would've
that. Oh,
loved that.
the big heads and extra blood.
I loved it back when big heads was a common feature.
And zero gravity mode, I would just...
Oh,
There's a zero gravity mode.
yeah, do all the tricks in one jump.
Like in Pro Skater 4, you could combine zero gravity with like Matrix mode, which makes you go in slow motion whenever you jump.
That
I
was
wish I
some
had
fun
that game
stuff.
still. Yeah, if they make a 4, if they remaster 4, I am getting it for sure.
Yeah, I can't
Oh, I
wait for
can't
the remaster of 1 and 2 just to start off, but yeah,
Actually,
for-
yeah, I'm excited for those too because I never got to play those, so it would be really nice to get to play them now.
Mhm.
Have you guys
Especially-
looked at the pricing?
I haven't seen it yet.
It's for PS4 because it's going to be bundled, of course, for 1 and 2. It's only like $40.
Sold.
Nice.
Yeah,
Actually, that doesn't surprise me because I'm pretty sure that's what the Spyro and Crash games sold at.
yeah, true.
Which, hey, I'm glad that not every single video game costs 60, $70 off the get-go.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, just the last week or so, I was able to complete the one goal that I was never able to complete in American Wasteland after 15 years.
Oh?
It's basically a goal where you have to just rapidly tap the X button, but any game that required that, I could never seem to accomplish it. Like, I found the trick that works for me is to just put the controller on a flat surface and just rapidly do it with my index finger instead of my thumb, like I would usually do if I was holding it. But
Yeah.
like when I was trying it the normal way, I legit could never beat this goal.
Yeah, I know I've certainly had to use that cheat before. Like God of War was one where I had to figure out a pretty good way to mash that button down. Which, hey, if they make Kratos, well, I guess they probably want it now since he's bearded Kratos, but I could totally see Kratos being an unlockable character in PS2, PS3 era for these games.
I mean, they should just do that anyway. That would be amazing. Big old muscly guy.
That'd be pretty awesome if they could, include like secret unlockable characters that are from like PlayStation franchises. That would be awesome.
Well, I remember like Mortal Kombat 11 had Kratos as an unlockable character, and that series has redeemed itself after so-so outing there that we thought was going to kill it. So, hey, anything's possible.
And I mean, like, you and me, Clancy, we both said we're hoping for Crash, and since they had Jack Black on the promo video for the remaster, let's get Poe from Kung Fu
Oh, I would love either Poe or just Jack Black himself. That would be awesome.
Or why not both? Like, say you can play as Jack Black and you do a certain move combo and turn into Poe.
Yes! Call it Unleash the Panda.
Yes! Oh my gosh.
I like when later games gave you the ability to like make up your own special tricks, and I just give them dumb names.
All right, here's a question for you guys. If the remake sells well, name a level that you would want them to create in a new game, and also a song you would want them to add.
Okay, for me, I'm thinking of if I'm going with like levels that are based on like generic concepts and not specific cities, I would want like a water park level. I could just imagine like grinding down long slides for gaps.
Dang it, Dave, you took mine. I'm going to have to think of something
Fuck, I'm
else.
sorry.
It's all good. We didn't discuss this beforehand.
And I guess maybe continuing my like bringing Kung Fu Panda like aspect. Let's like make a China level.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, they did go overseas for some of the games levels.
Grind the Great Wall.
Ha! That would be cool.
And as for songs, like you've seen Halloween 6, right, Clancy?
Yeah.
Like in the theatrical cut, they used this song called "And Fools Shine On" by Brother Kane, which I really liked.
That'd be a good one. I haven't heard that song in a long time, so I'll have to look it up later to refresh my memory, but I remember enjoying it. All right, Lynette, what do you got?
You said for the remaster of 1 and 2, right?
No, I'm saying just if the remaster sells super well and they make a new Pro Skater game afterwards.
Oh, so like, okay, so like a level idea and a song idea. In keeping with the whole theme of like early 2000s rock, which to be honest, I'm kind of late to the party too, because I only just got into early 2000s rock probably like a few months ago, or maybe a year ago. So like, I would like maybe some like 3 Days Grace songs on there, because I feel like that's sort of from like around the same time, I want to say. So if like some 3 Days Grace songs could get on there, that would be nice. And I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I haven't seen most of the levels on 4. I don't know any of the levels on 1 and 2. So it's like, maybe if I suggest something, it's going to be, maybe they already did it.
Go ahead. We'll tell you.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, so you know how they have some of those, you know how some of the, like, three of the levels in number three, the Rio, Tokyo, and Skater Island, they were more like a competition type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would really like to see Tokyo, but not in competition form.
Oh, that'd be
You
good.
know, like I'd really like to see like some kind of Japanese themed level.
They actually sort of did that in like the PSP port of Thug 2, but it was Kyoto instead of Tokyo.
Oh, cool.
And I gotta say, like, one thing I really liked the Tony Hawk franchise for doing, like, was when they started including retro levels, even years before the Mario Kart games started doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun to get to play like older levels with the newer engines.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kiki, what do you got?
I think I'd said this before, but I'm definitely sticking with it. Is for the song, I would like to see Seven Dust Face to Face added to the lineup of songs, and I'm still pulling for the Antarctic level where you can grind on walruses and like jump from penguin to
Yes.
penguin,
Yes.
break off some ice.
Maybe the
something.
secret level could be a whale's back.
Yeah, or inside the whale.
Or here's an idea. You like go into a cave and it's like those sci-fi movies where there's actually a tropical area where the dinosaurs still live or something.
Ooh,
Yes.
that would be so cool.
And there's a UFO stuck in some ice as you're going by.
Oh my
Yes.
Like, was Activision the company that put out that Thing game? Because
I don't know if they were or weren't.
crossover.
Oh man,
Yes.
I love spooky Easter eggs. I mean, as obviously evidenced by the fact that my favorite thing about the game is the haunted mansion.
Haunted house.
But like, yeah, I love like spooky implications. Like that would be so cool if there was like an Antarctic level and there was something spooky that like, oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh,
As for me, I think what I would do if for a level is Seattle. I'd have it mostly based around the Space Needle area because you got the Museum of Pop Culture, the Space Needle, and the Singing Fountain all there in that immediate area, and I think they could really make that a cool area where you could grind off things, jump on the monorail, and go downtown. So then you could skate in like the Seattle Underground on there for a little bonus hidden area, and boy, talk about making things spooky. There's a spot to go crazy with. And then like have either the Mariners or the Seahawks Stadium have that where you can go into it and just inside's a whole bunch of ramps and whatnot that you could use. And as for the song, I would choose Tribute by Tenacious D.
oh yes.
Does Tenacious D still perform? I don't know.
I think they still do. I don't know. I mean, right now nobody's performing, but we'll see.
So, do we have any more positive memories, or should we start going downhill?
Well, I
I
love
forgot
the
to
downhill level.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention on the Suburbia level, there's also like one really cool little detail is I really liked when you run over a squirrel on the power lines. The trick is called Squirrel Stew.
Oh my gosh.
Go figure
I
the
love
person
that.
who works in a morgue is a bit messed up in the head there.
Oh, what? I'm sorry. How is killing a rodent messed up? What?
That's just what serial killers say.
I guess, and one more question I have before we go into the fall of this franchise is whether they be very fun or just incredibly frustrating. Were there any goals that stick out in your mind even after all these years?
The secret tape in the cruise level for it took me months to figure out how to actually get that.
I feel like, I feel like one of the secret areas that was really hard for me and Matt to get into consistently was the airport one with the helicopter. I
Oh,
don't remember
really?
why. I don't remember why it was kind of difficult for us, but like I guess we were just having trouble keeping straight where it was or something. But like I
Okay, I
don't
can see
remember
that.
seeing that nearly as often as the other secret areas or anything. So we thought it was like super dope.
That's actually a pretty easy one to get into. I'll tell you how to do it. You just go right immediately when the level starts and go into the baggage thing. And that'll take you right there.
Oh, okay. I think it probably was just that we couldn't. We just couldn't keep straight where it was.
To be fair, how old were we when we were playing this? Like 8,
Well, and
10?
the airport is such a strangely shaped level because it's like long ways, and it's also just it feels like it's bigger than the other levels just because of the way it's shaped. I think
Mm-hmm.
very strange.
For me, like when 4 started introducing the collect the combo letters challenges,
Oh, some of those were.
so that's why they invented cheat codes, and that's why I would eventually give up and turn on perfect balance.
Yeah, some of those you had to master that balance system. How about you, Kiki?
Mine is still the drunk guy with the pink elephants. Like that
That
I've
was
never forgotten
hard.
doing that one. Yeah. His name was like Frank or something.
Ollie. His name was Ollie.
Ollie. Okay. Okay.
Not gonna lie, I have pink elephants on parade stuck in my head at the moment.
I love that song.
And now you do too. Thanks, There you go, listeners. Well, shall we?
Yep, let's proceed to the bad.
First, everybody take out a shot of whiskey or your drink of choice. Cheers, everyone.
Yes, because I totally could.
I'll say this much: I don't think American Wasteland's that bad. Like, it's definitely like where it's starting to go downhill, but it never enters full out bad territory for me.
For me, I couldn't get into it. Like, I think I stopped playing it like an hour into it just because a basic trick that I used to be able to pull off no problem, I couldn't for some reason.
Well, actually, I think that in that game, there like certain moves are like locked from you until it's like taught to you in story.
Well, it was a teach me in story situation, and it's like, for some reason, I couldn't pull it off.
Mhm.
So I think I ended up just doing a level skip or something, and I still just couldn't get into this one. It's not a broken game. We'll get to that. But it's certainly, it was the sign of where things were going.
And I think the reason for me why Project 8 and Proving Ground weren't anything special for me was they kind of lack the cartoonier aspects of the old school games and Underground.
Yeah, for sure. Now, was Project 8 the one where they tried selling that skateboard attachment, or was that...
That was Ride and Shred.
Okay. Speaking of things that were very popular for a while and completely disappeared.
Yeah, we actually, I remember we actually had that one of those ride games, and we had that skateboard. I never ended up playing it. I have no idea what that game even looks like. Like even like the title screen, I have no idea. All I know is that we had the game at some point. I don't know if anybody in our family actually played it.
I think I saw your dad try it one time, and
Oh, that's right. My
that
dad
was the only time I saw it played.
And the sad thing is, like, all like history I can find on the franchise suggests the board peripheral was Hawk's idea himself.
It's not a bad idea, I suppose. It's just
Especially, like, look at what Guitar Hero was doing for guitar sales at the time.
I mean, I can imagine, like, the developers thinking, like, if we get this to work, we've won.
No, I think definitely Tony Hawk wanting it and Activision making literally ships full of money from the Guitar Hero franchise and all the things you had to buy to go along with that was probably the inspiration there.
yeah, I wonder why it didn't take off. Is it just because by that time all the skateboard hype was gone?
Oh, because it played controlled horribly.
Oh, did it? Well, then
Yeah,
that would be it.
I saw it wasn't the Angry Video Game Nerd, but it was one of his copycats.
Oh,
Like, just go on a rant about how broken it was.
I mean, like, with most media commonly regarded as bad, you can search the internet and find someone who will make a sincere defense of it. I've never seen anybody try to defend this.
Yeah, it's like Guitar Hero I could see in like 10 years maybe making a comeback when people are nostalgic for it. I think that was the mistake with when they tried to bring it back when they did, is it hadn't been gone long enough. But I cannot see anybody ever trying the skateboard peripheral again.
I guess I
Although-
think that just came out shortly after the Wii was a huge success, so everybody was trying to get on the motion control bandwagon.
Yeah. Although that being said, I wouldn't mind seeing a Tony Hawk game in VR just to see what they could do with it.
my gosh.
Mhm.
Feel
And the
like
thing is, like, with
I feel like that would be so. I feel like you would get so much vertigo from that.
Probably, but I just love anything in VR. It's the future.
And the thing is, people, like, you would look at how Ride and Shred failed and think, hey, this is the absolute low point of the series. There's no more, like, damage that could be done to it. There's no way they can make it worse. Right?
I believe we said that about 2020 at the Killer Hornets part, right?
But then in 2015, solely because Activision was about to run out the licensing contract they had made with Tony Hawk at, like, around the start of the 2000s, they put out one more title while they still have the license, Pro Skater 5.
All right, folks, take another shot. You're going to need it for this one.
This is like a sick joke.
Yeah, first off, I want to make it perfectly clear this was not developed by Neversoft. And
Hey, rest in peace.
yes, rest in peace, Neversoft. We loved you. Seriously,
You
you
introduced me
made
to
the Spider-Man game. Yeah. You made the Spider-Man game, you made Gun, you made Tony Hawk and Guitar Hero. You deserve better than what you got.
Mhm.
But this game is... I didn't ever actually play it myself, because I played the demo at a GameStop one time, and I was like, nope. But I saw Let's Plays of it, and this game was unfinished. I'm not even going to say broken. It was unfinished when it came out.
Literally, it had a day one patch that was more gigabytes than the game itself.
Oh my word!
I forgot about that.
And the physics are a straight up joke.
What physics?
I mean, look at the ways you wipe out. Sometimes you just fuse into the ground.
Oh, there was a lot of clipping through the levels themselves in that one. Like, want to know what it reminded me of the most?
Mm-hmm.
The Spyro Year of the Dragonfly.
Enter the Dragonfly, you mean?
Enter the Dragonfly. Thank you. Yes, that's another game that absolutely broke my heart and deserves a rant all on its own. But I believe Activision actually published that one too, didn't they?
I'm not sure. I knew like Activision eventually owned Crash. I'm not sure if they owned Spyro.
I'm
I
pretty
think it was
sure they did.
Universal that owned Spyro for most of its lifetime.
Okay, well, whoever's responsible, both those games have the same problems where you can literally fall into an endless pit by going over the ground. Literally, you do nothing but move forward, and the game will just... they're unfinished.
Well, now wait a second. Enter the Dragonfly, you said? I'm pretty sure that was the only Spyro game I ever played.
Was it on
Telling me that that's the
PlayStation
bottom
2?
of the barrel? Yeah, about PlayStation 2.
I hate that game. That is...
Well,
that almost
I had to try
single-hand-
Spyro games again.
yeah, that almost single-handedly killed the Spyro franchise for a while.
And also, what really kills me about Pro Skater 5 is just how unimaginative the levels are.
No,
The levels used to be like my favorite aspect of each of these games, but
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's...
I take it's not the kind of glitchy fun where you get to find all the glitches thing.
well, it's definitely like I've seen like Cat Icarus covered like the top 10 glitches of Pro Skater 5. Like, it's something you can definitely get laughs out of from other people playing.
I think it's one of those things where if you buy it now for like $2, there's entertainment to come out of it. But like any game that's super glitchy, if you pay full price for it, my condolences.
I mean, back when, because I never bought a PS4, back in 2015 when this was being announced and I heard there's going to be a new Tony Hawk game and it's going to be another Pro Skater title, it almost made me want to buy a PS4, and then just how bad it went over.
Yeah. Which is why I'm really hoping, kind of turning this into happy news, from what we've seen of the HD remake of Pro Skater 1 and 2, I hope this redeems the franchise.
Oh, me too. I hope at the very least they get around to doing a remaster of 3 and 4.
I'm sure they will if it sells well enough.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be buying the remaster 1 and 2 because, like I said, I didn't get a chance to play those, and I think it'd be really nice to be able to play them.
Yeah, I don't buy pre-order games anymore just because I got burnt enough times growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something I do anymore. Honestly, I wait till essentially the reviews come out and all that.
Well, I wasn't going to pre-order. I was just going to wait till it shows up on Steam.
Yeah, I knew. Just speaking for myself. I mean, if you want to pre-order, it's nothing against it, people. It's just something I don't do.
I pre-ordered a game exactly once, and do you know what that game was?
What?
Aliens Colonial Marines.
Oh!
Yeah, big fucking oof, right? Like the one time I pre-order a game.
Like, the first game I ever pre-ordered was, like, the original Kingdom Hearts.
That one worked out in your favor, though.
And also, I've mentioned this franchise before, but basically, like, all the sequels to the Danganronpa games, which, when I learned that GameSpot, like, lets you basically pre-order as soon as a release date is put out, like, I was able to pre-order something 8 months in advance.
Nice.
And I just really hope that even if another game doesn't get made, I just hope this is good, because I want these to go out on a high note at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I would say was part of my childhood, and I want to have at least one last hurrah, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Hard to imagine how a remaster could fuck it up. I mean, is there some precedent to that where, like, there was the remaster somehow ended up being worse than the original?
There's been examples of it, yeah.
Well, and a few years back, there was that Pro Skater HD thing.
Speaking,
That wasn't abysmal, but it wasn't well received.
yeah, it was definitely you could play the older version and it would be far superior. So there are definite ways, especially for games this old, that they have to essentially rebuild from the ground up. But it's done by Vicarious Visions, who also did the Crash Bandicoot Twin Insanity remake, so I have hope.
I do wonder if there'll be, besides like the changed soundtrack, as I know they said they didn't get the rights to all the old songs, if there'll be any secret levels or other new content that weren't in the first two games.
I don't know. I know they did a few levels of DLC, which for the Insanity trilogy.
Insane.
Insane, thank you. I keep wanting to say Twin Insanity whenever I talk about this game, and that's a totally different game.
And I like Twinsanity.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Crash had a much better post-original studio life than what Spyro had.
So, spoiler section, I can't believe at the end of Pro Skater 4 they killed off all the skaters.
I know. I mean, Thanos showing up there and just snapping his fingers. I did not expect that.
Well, theoretically, because they did have the Marvel license then, they could have included him.
Yeah,
like,
true.
was the Thanos snap a story thing by 2002?
Oh, yeah, that happened in the 90s. That happened in, like, 92, I want to say, during the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, there's just so many things about the series that I love, and
Ooh, I forgot to mention the ice cream truck in Suburbia. The absolutely insane ice cream truck that just drives really fast around in circles and absolutely fucking plows you. Like other cars, they might stop for you. Not the ice cream truck. You will absolutely, and it's this horrible sound too. It's like the other cars, they have kind of a bump sound, but there's a real goosh when the ice cream truck hits you.
or
I
when
will... Go ahead.
or when you can create the earthquake in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not sure we ever actually did that.
Really?
When me and Matt played, yeah, I don't think I remember creating the earthquake.
I thought that was one of the unlock
no,
things.
but that doesn't make sense because I remember like seeing the broken bridge and hearing the guy yelling. So, yeah, I don't know. For some reason, the earthquake is a plague, but I totally remember the broken bridge part. So that we must have caused the earthquake at some point.
I will say about that ice cream truck on the PlayStation 1 version of Pro Skater 3, you can actually do a trick where you go from one half pipe to another. And if you do that right, you'll knock over a telephone pole and it'll smash the ice cream truck, which was so satisfying.
Oh, that is awesome. But they're still not forgiven for not including the Haunted Mansion.
This is true.
I mean, these games, you'd maybe want to try skateboarding, and then I tried and instantly failed, and I never tried again.
Oh yeah, I know. Like
I
mean,
believe
they do make you feel like it would be fun, but I can hardly balance on my own 2 feet, let alone a board.
Oh, and that actually is when you made a joke about like the whole Thanos snap thing. Going back to the other like extreme sports titles, I promise you, I am not making this up. Like when you complete the final level in Pro BMX 2, you suddenly have a first-person shooter boss battle.
What?
I'll show it to you after the recording. I am not lying.
You know, it's okay not to have boss levels in certain games.
That sounds pretty dope. I mean,
I mean, if this was like the SXX or
Mhm.
the Cool Borders games, it almost makes sense because I believe you could punch people while snowboarding in those. But
No, like you suddenly get off the bike and you just pull out a gun.
Oh my god.
That is awesome. Like, who knew you were packing the whole time?
Mhm.
Do people punch you in that game too? It makes me wonder, like, every time somebody made you biff, why you didn't pull out the gun then? Well, because, like, when they punch you, I mean, if I recall correctly, like, you biff pretty bad when they punch you. It's like blood all over the floor. Like,
that was always fun in those games. I think we've named off like 4 or 5 franchise at this point that we need to take a look at in the future.
Mhm. So, anything else you guys want to talk about, or should we go into our final general thoughts?
I'm good if you guys are.
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, like let's do this one at a time. Lynette.
I mean, I don't know. My thoughts are pretty obvious. I pretty much only played the Pro Skater 3, but it was an integral part of my childhood and my brother's childhood. We absolutely love the game. Matt, who is not here to speak for himself, I'll just let you know, his favorite was the cruise ship. He loved the greenhouse. He would spend like the entire time just going around the greenhouse over and over. Same thing with my dad. And I like I said, obviously my favorite, Suburbia. I 100% love the Haunted Mansion. It's so cool and spooky. And Canada is my second favorite. I love that it has a rural setting, so that's really nice. Trees, love trees. So
Okay, Kiki.
Pretty much the same thing that Lynette said, but for the number 4, and I'm really hoping that all of us '90s kids can band together and give a great reception to this remaster, so we can get the rest, or if maybe not the rest, but at least a good portion of these games redone.
I mean, if
Yeah.
anything, I want from the 2020s just to be the big resurgence of 90s nostalgia. We've done so many things with 80s. We can move on a decade.
Well, technically we will be in the 30-year rule, so we're coming up on it.
Hey, I'm already 30.
Well, no, that's the 30-year rule is that the nostalgia properties are whatever was 30 years prior. So that's why it's been all the 80s here lately, or like in the 80s, it was the 50s. So we're coming up on the 90s. Now, what scares me is when we get the early 2000s and we have to deal with a Limp Bizkit resurgence.
I don't know what that is.
That's a really terrible band that you should live in ignorance about.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Your thoughts, Clancy?
You know, replaying these games, it made me realize just how much of a part of my childhood they were, and just legitimately I can say 3's probably one of my top 10 games of all time. After replaying it again, I forgot how much I love these games, and that's a shame.
These games, as I've said, they were a big part of my childhood, like exploring all the levels, doing all the special tricks, finding the gaps, which eventually I would have to turn to guides for. But they were just so much fun each year, just getting all these new goals to do, and I want to see this series come back with a high note. It's just one of my favorite franchises. And if you haven't played these games, go back and play the old ones. Like all 4 of the Pro Skaters and the 2 Thugs are still hold up for me, and it's definitely probably my favorite franchise of that era. Like, and it's a perfect capsule for what the culture was at the time. Where, I mean, I'm not even sure like if I could say a modern franchise is that for the modern day, but like Neversoft will never forget you.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, both 2 and 3 are regarded as some of the are. It's not even regarded. Statistically speaking, you look them up on Metacritic, they have like a 99 and a 98 score, which we're never all in unison on anything anymore to that level.
Mm-hmm.
These were from a special place in time where, hey, it didn't matter if you were skateboard pro or didn't even know what a skateboard looked like until you picked up the game. These were something everyone could get into.
And yeah, and since we are sharing our thoughts, like Alcatraz is my favorite level, you should definitely play that one. And the multiplayer modes in this were very fun, like just how they had like all different types of games you could play with your friends. And also, I'd like to advertise that this like fan mod community called Thug Pro, which was basically like taking the PC version of Thug 2. They were able to port levels from all across the series, and basically it was a way of keeping the franchise alive throughout the 2010s. I think it's still going on today, and I think even one of the developers of Pro Skater 5 said you should just play that instead.
That is both sad and awesome.
But yeah, before we go, we must say Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure was a thing.
Yes, it was. But before we finally go, Lynette, it's your pick next week. How about a little tease for what we'll be talking about?
Alrighty, well, we spent quite a while talking about the Birdman. Next, we're going to be talking about Mr. Wayne.
And folks, thank you once again for watching us. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you can listen to our podcast on Google Play. I'm blanking all of a sudden. iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else podcasts are available. Thank you all again for watching, and if you want to give us a comment and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you, Dave, for picking such a great topic for this week.
You're welcome, and I already have the one picked out for my next turn in a few weeks.
Nice. Kiki, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Lynette, can't wait to talk about your topic next week. Thank you for being on this one.
Oh, yeah, it was so much fun.
And thank you, folks, one more time. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Hi, folks. Clancy here. Just want to hop on real quick before you guys click off and just say a little message that I like ending these videos with every single time, and that's just a message on mental health, and that if you're out there struggling, which there's so many reasons why you would be right now, to not give up the fight, to push on for one more day, because I promise you, it may take a while, but it will eventually get better. I've been at the point where I've wanted to completely give up in my life, but I kept struggling and kept fighting. Even sometimes I didn't want to. I had to spend some time in the hospital just to get me in the right state of mind before I could even go to my own house and sleep without being a threat to myself. And my wish, if I could grant it to the entire world, is that nobody else has to suffer like that. It's not a fate I'd wish on my worst enemy. But if you are in the position where you struggle with this, just remember, it's not your fault. Our brain chemicals do things that we can't control sometimes. But if you ever do need the help, the suicide prevention number is 1-800-273-8255. Again, it's 1-800-273-8255. You're not alone in this battle. 1 in 4 adults suffer from mental health. It's time we end the stigma and raise awareness.